everyone, Jen here. I'm the founder and executive director of the Muddy Pug Farm and Sanctuary outside of Maple Valley, Washington. And Cupid, Coopy, and I are here, and we are gonna do the next installment of the awesome book, One Day I Want to Have a Farm Sanctuary. Look at this book, Coopy. And this is by the awesome team at the Cloven Heart Farm Sanctuary. And we have been getting through chapter 1, which talks through the fantasy versus reality of running a sanctuary. And I cannot believe it, but we are actually at the end of chapter 1. And the segment that Cupid and I are going to talk about is called You Will Want to Quit Almost Every Day. And this is the perfect topic, topping off a long work week in my day job, and also on a very gloomy late May day in the Pacific Northwest. Oh, Coopy! Oh, I just put my hand in poop. Oh, Coopy! This is why I almost want to quit every day. Oh, dang it! Just hold on a second. We're gonna figure out another place. Alrighty then. Dude, there's some crazy stuff that happens on the sanctuary that you have to gird yourself to deal with, but every time something like that happens, it is not okay. So let's pick up where we left off, shall we? I have generally agreed and have experienced a lot of what the Cloven Heart team has talked about in previous segments of chapter 1. I'm just going to set this here. But what's interesting about this particular chapter, all kidding aside, is that yes, the work of the sanctuary can be extraordinarily challenging. I feel like I talk about that in every segment. But for me personally, I have not gotten to the point that I wanted to quit doing the sanctuary work or close the sanctuary because I found the work of the sanctuary to be too challenging. But when we read this segment, there are a couple of really important call outs that the team at Cloven Heart makes that are worth discussing as to, all things being equal, why you might be so overwhelmed in the day-to-day. Oh my God, I have hay everywhere. Why you might be so overwhelmed in the day-to-day that you just every single day are like, I don't think I can do this anymore. So the first area that the team of Cloven Heart addresses in this segment is the concern around animal care. And interestingly enough, the day-to-day care of the residents, like getting everybody fed, cleaning their areas, making sure that just the general day-to-day of animal care is not actually the most challenging part of the sanctuary. It takes a tremendous amount of time and it can be very physically taxing, but connecting with your residents to care for them is often one of the more rewarding parts of doing sanctuary work. Having said that, there are a couple of ways that you can manage the day-to-day care of residents on the sanctuary in a way that is going to make it easier for you. And I will quote Dr. Ralph Rossi, my physician at the Polyclinic, when he says to be incredibly cognizant about your body and where you're at in your life stage as you are doing care for the residents, and to make sure that you are physically capable and fit to do the work of caring for your residents day in and day out. And that is something that I take very, very seriously. I get up early every morning so that I can work out on top of like all the other farm work that I do, because it is super important for my body to be strong, to be resilient, to be flexible. I mean, Jesus, mama's pushing 50. Okay, this business, it isn't getting any younger. So we got to keep it tip top in order to do the work of the sanctuary. And I have had situations on the sanctuary. I was never injured. Was I injured on the sanctuary? I think I may have had instances where I've rolled my ankle on the sanctuary, but the times where I've really injured myself are just so dumb. Like one time I fell in the parking lot and I broke my ankle, but that meant that I had to do all of the work of the sanctuary in a boot in order to manage that situation. And so it really just takes one really minor thing for you physically to not be able to do the work of the sanctuary. And so I would really encourage you, if you are not an exercisey kind of person, you gotta start doing that for the sake of your residents, because we have seen sanctuaries where if someone gets injured, like the resident care stops, or they're not mucking stalls, or they're not cleaning up after everyone, and that puts your residents at risk. So like you need to have the systems in place from a prevention standpoint to make sure that you're going to be able to physically do the work of the sanctuary. And on like the flip side of that, you need to have a backup plan. And we talked about how sometimes sanctuaries are off the beaten path, that you may be building your volunteer corps and you may just not have the bat phone for anybody. You got to have the bat, like somebody's got to have the bat phone for you if something really goes sideways on the sanctuary and you're not able to actually do the work. The second part about animal care that people can find very exhausting, and again, we've talked about, you know, the caring for residents when they are sick, when they're not well, and that certainly takes its toll. And again, like that's something you have to prepare for. You have to prepare financially if your residents get sick. So you should have a designated part of your funding or within your finances that will help in case of emergency, because as anyone who runs a sanctuary can attest, it really doesn't take much in terms of urgent or emergent situations for you to start running a tab within the thousands of dollars. And unlike human care, when it comes to vet care, especially for certain types of resident, a vet will not see your resident until you can make a deposit and pay. So like just make sure you have those resources, because the financial stress associated with urgent situations around resident care can be incredibly stressful on top of an already stressful situation. The other part of caring for residents is thinking about the intake of residents. And it has been our experience, and brothers and sisters of the sanctuary and rescue community, please keep me honest, that there is literally a wall of unwanted, abused, neglected, abandoned animals of all shapes and sizes and species that are just crashing over the sanctuary and rescue community. And this is the toughest part, because you know, you are here to save lives, and there is a point where you are going to reach capacity and you are going to have to say no to people. So the most fantastically unimaginable thing happens when you have someone reach out to you asking you to take one of their animals. Usually they are not willing to pay or assist. It's usually a situation where they're like, oh, if you can't take this animal, we're just gonna have it slaughtered. If you say no, you should prepare yourself for the most belligerent ridiculous diatribe to come your way from someone who took responsibility for an animal that they are no longer willing to take responsibility for. And like, I realize that life happens, and the challenge that rescues and sanctuaries are facing right now is that animals are just kind of being thrown over the fence to us at an astonishing rate, and there is not enough space, there aren't enough fosters, there's just not enough capacity. And I realize that it can be a frustrating and stressful situation to have to surrender an animal. It just makes it a million times worse when you are verbally abusive and terrible to the people who are running themselves ragged trying to receive all of these animals and just cannot take any more. So that is the kind of animal care bucket of these just sort of death by 1,000 cut situations where someone could say like, God, I don't have it in me. I don't have any gas left in the tank to keep doing this kind of work and keep facing this kind of day in and day out. Get ready, friends, because there's 3 more buckets to go through. The second area where people tend to get over their skis and really overwhelmed really fast is in the business operations of the sanctuary. And not surprisingly, the Venn diagram of someone who like loves and cares for animals and goes into rescue work and a businessy oriented person, like that doesn't often overlap. And so I think what people often forget about an organization like a sanctuary is, at its core, it is still an organization that needs to operate, and there are business components to the day-to-day work of the sanctuary that you are going to either have to be prepared to do yourself, or you are going to want to find others and delegate that work. And I will quote my wonderful colleague Brian Cruden when I say that when you first start your sanctuary, you are going to find yourself being the chief cook and the bottle washer and all points in between. So you are going to be the one who is taking care of animals, you're going to be writing your policies, you're going to have to manage the business side of the sanctuary. You will do fundraising, you will do social media, and when you get to the point, when you get to the point where you are a more mature sanctuary, or if you're connected with other mature, like decades old sanctuaries, they have people that work full time to do just every single one of those jobs that I just talked about. And so this is where when you think about, gosh, like I have to do my nonprofit filing, I have to have a CPA that manages and audits my financials, I need to get my registration with my local jurisdiction, and I need to pass any inspections that happen. I need to get insurance, my favorite topic. You got to have the insurance if you're running a sanctuary. And like all of those things, it's not that they take a long time, but as we've discussed before, when you're running a sanctuary, you can replace almost everything in the day-to-day operations of the sanctuary but your time. It is like hands down your most precious resource, and it can be incredibly frustrating and overwhelming when you have just a to-do list of these 5 different jobs that are funneling into you as the founder and executive director. And this is where we would just so encourage you to slow your roll, and that you put in, my favorite word, hello video bingo, a framework for figuring out how you're going to solve for these business-oriented tasks. So I know that, and I did this too when I opened the sanctuary. I'm like, woohoo, I'm going to open a sanctuary. Pew, pew, pew. Let's put up some fencing. Let's get some residents. And when you do that, you are not really allowing yourself the time to like stage the organization in methodical steps. So if you want to open a sanctuary, I know how exciting it is. I know how awesome it is to have residents. And I would just encourage you to like go slowly so that the business of the sanctuary and the operations of the sanctuary are keeping pace with you bringing on residents and really standing up the sanctuary. As a subset of the business end of sanctuary work, you will also need to give to the universe that for the first 5 to 7 years, you will both need to personally, in some capacity, finance the sanctuary. And so you will want to make sure that your personal finances are prepared and resilient to do that. And you will need to get very comfortable and cozy with the idea of fundraising, aka consistently asking people to give you money for this work. And we have talked about in other segments like the challenges associated with fundraising and creating a sustainable method of funding over time, because much hay gets eaten on the sanctuary. There are medical costs, there are supplies costs, there are infrastructure costs. And if you are someone who is incredibly uncomfortable with consistently asking for money and figuring out ways to do fundraising, whether it's direct asks out to the community, whether you use Patreon, which requires that you generate content, or you may look for grants, you will need to solve for like, how do you do that? Where do you go? What does that look like for you? And that is a place where it can really feel never ending and exhausting, especially if from a personal financial standpoint, you are not in the position to really personally fund the sanctuary. I am so incredibly grateful and fortunate to have a wonderful day job and amazing colleagues in an organization that supports this work that I do. And I am also very cognizant that this is something that, you know, even for the next 1 to 2 years, as we are continuing to work in building out sustainable fundraising, that I am going to have to fund the majority of. And this can be a place of just incredible stress, because you feel, as you should, that, you know, when you have all of your residents, you are responsible for their well-being and care. And just like any other animal that you might have, even for a companion animal, like if you cannot afford that animal and understand how you are going to finance for that animal over its life, like I know it's difficult, but it needs to be said, you should not bring on any residents that are unfunded. And that's why you will see, everybody has their own philosophy on this, but you will see sanctuaries and rescues who will say, like, this is the situation for this resident that we would like to bring in, but we will not move forward with bringing this particular resident into our rescue or sanctuary unless we have a sponsor or that resident funded. So even though it might seem very cold and calculating to say we do not rescue animals that are not funded, that really is a reality in the rescue and sanctuary world, that you will want to make sure that there is a method to fund all of the residents on your sanctuary. Another part of fundraising is not only getting comfortable with the asking for money, the financial management of donations and fundraising, but you also need to think about how you are going to engage with the community in a way that helps them to understand and see the value of the work that you do. And this is an area where I was certainly taken aback as I started this work. I thought, well, gosh, like, of course people would want to support this. Who wouldn't want to support an animal sanctuary that, you know, takes in animals that are neglected and abused or abandoned, and look at like what a wonderful life they have? And the challenge with sometimes engaging individual donors as well as engaging the broader community is that you will need to understand and accept that more often than not, the people that are donating to your sanctuary or rescue are people that love animals but may not entirely buy into the philosophy that sits behind a sanctuary, which is 99% of farm sanctuaries believe that animals and animal products are not a good thing, and that you should not consume animals or products that come from animals. And so this is where, you know, it can feel very frustrating and deflating when you have when you see people who love your work and support your work and also continue to participate in the system that is why residents come to you in the first place. I have made peace with that by just looking at it in the sense of it takes a long time because the consumption of animals and animal products is so deeply embedded in every single culture. It is a sea change for individual people to come to realize that they don't want to do that anymore. When you run a sanctuary, you have an opportunity to kindly and firmly, in a very compelling way, show people that animals are sentient beings and they don't deserve to be in the animal agriculture system. And so, like, you will need to think about that, and you will need to find your own path towards that. The pugs are fence fighting with the dog like half a mile away. But that's something that you'll want to think about, and that's a source of not only frustration, but I can certainly attest to feeling at times like very just very deflated by how people tend to view animals, especially farmed animals. And it's something where, you know, people are going to take their cues from you. And I would just encourage you to approach it in a kind but firm manner to help to educate people about the treatment of animals as you think about how you engage the community. The last area, which can be very, very overwhelming, is, and we've talked about it in the episode right before this, where the barn is an extension, or your home is an extension of the barn, is the grind of engagement and posting on social media. And we are just of an age now where this is part and parcel of the work of the sanctuary, is to help people to look behind the scenes, to help them to get to know our residents, to understand the kind of work that we do. But boy howdy, I'm almost 50 and I'm not wired to do the social media. I know that there are sanctuaries out there, and I am just they are just like machines on the social media, and I don't know how they do it so consistently and so awesomely, but this is like, there is a relentlessness to having to engage in social media, and that is an area, hold on please, I got all kinds of hay on me. That's an area where honestly, like, I continue to struggle. And the way that I look at it is like, I only have so much time and energy, and the social media is an area where I've just kind of put it in the fuck it bucket, and if I get to it, I get to it. There are times when it's really easy for me to do that, and there are times when I just can't get to it. And that's sort of, if I were to think of all of the different buckets and thinking about how you manage these feelings, like, this is so overwhelming, I can't do this anymore, I want to quit, you will need to think about each of these areas and to really get religion about what are the areas that I am never willing to compromise on. Pro tip: animal care, resident care should be the area that you never compromise on. But what are the other areas that you can potentially flex on, or find additional help on, or even just like give yourself the grace for being a human being that it's been 2 weeks and I haven't managed to get a post out on the Instagram. So like, give yourself some grace in the areas where it's appropriate to do so, because when I think of all of the sanctuaries and rescues that I've interacted with, like, nobody does it perfectly. Nobody is superhuman. Nobody fires on all of their cylinders every single second of the day. And that's also going to happen for you. And as long as that doesn't happen in the area of resident care, that's okay. Like, you will get through it if you have to flex on all other areas outside of resident care. So, I also promised a conversation about what made me want to quit the sanctuary. And this is a difficult topic, but I am going to start, I am ready to start talking about it. And I think it's important to start talking about it to give it a voice. As I mentioned at the start of this video, it has never been the actual work, like the day-to-day work or even project work of the sanctuary, that has made me want to quit. I think where I am really wired well and suited well for sanctuary work is I get a lot. Mama gets a lot out of working really hard. I love to work really hard. I find it really energizing. I find the problem solving that has to happen on the sanctuary just weirdly and masochistically interesting and fun. And I am always thinking about how can I look at the sanctuary and how can I improve what we do to serve our residents better, and serve our community better, and serve our mission better. So that is where, like, I am departing from the team at the Cloven Heart, in that I can absolutely empathize and understand where people would struggle kind of in those 4 buckets. I just have never personally gotten to the point where I needed to stop the sanctuary to do it. What made me want to quit the sanctuary is that over the last 2.5 to 3 years, really starting in December of 2021, so a long time, I have been, from my perspective, stuck in a marriage that there's just no way to sugarcoat it. From my perspective, it was very emotionally abusive and damaging to me. And there were events that transpired leading up to that winter, and there was just like a line of demarcation where it just started to get really bad, and it stayed at a level of bad and really challenging for a long time. And the people who are close personal friends of mine and people who I am really closely connected to in the rescue community have been aware that this has been going on. And just like any other relationship that is toxic and abusive, I myself found it very difficult to understand what was going on, to really see like the reality of what was going on and how damaging it was, and then to get to the point where I could make some changes to protect myself, and eventually like exit that marriage. I've talked about how I'm going through a divorce now, but the reason that got so entangled in the work of the sanctuary is because, like in the prior segment, that's called "It's Not a Job, It's a Lifestyle." Like the sanctuary, my personal residence is on the sanctuary. I live here with my family, and the work of the sanctuary is just very enmeshed with everything else that is going on here. And so as I was trying to do the work of the sanctuary over the last 2.5 years, it became very entangled and enmeshed in this terrible situation. And I began to associate just the negativity and the toxicity and terrible things that were happening with the day-to-day of the sanctuary. And I'm in the barn heavy use area, and so I'm like looking around the sanctuary, and like up to my left is the outbuilding, and I look at the outbuilding and I see like that is where the workshop is. That is where we took care of Rose, Felice, and Abby when they came here. And that's also a place where I was screamed at for so loud and for so long that my partner lost his voice. Like that's that, and all of that, when I go in the outbuilding, like all of that is there for me. And if you have ever been in a situation like this, you know that you have just these like both tiny little situations that wear on you, and then there are also these explosively traumatic situations that are almost just intertwined, like inextricably intertwined with places and times and smells and events in the year. And that's how I felt about sanctuary work. And it got to the point where I just felt like, for lack of a better word, that the work of the sanctuary was like tainted and poisoned. And I wasn't even sure that, because I was so unhappy and depressed and anxious and walking on eggshells and stressed out, and had nightmares every night, and I wasn't sleeping, that I don't even know that I was like confident that I was showing up as the best person I could for everybody here. And so I began making like very quiet inquiries of like, hey, I don't really know how to have all of this going on and continue to do this. And like there are so many like as I reflect on that time, you might be saying, well, Jen, I see that you live on the sanctuary by yourself and you seem like you're finding your way. And how did that happen? So what happened for me about 15 months ago or so, we're recording this in May of 2024. So what happened about 15 months ago is I'm a huge podcast listener, and one person who I listen to all the time on the sanctuary is Jay Shetty, and he talks about a quote that you will often hear me say, because I often hear him say it. It is that if you protect your purpose will protect you. And I so deeply feel that this work is my purpose. And about 15 or so months ago, I went to my partner at the time and said, I am going to do 90+% of the work of the sanctuary by myself. So I will do all of the day-to-day work by myself, because I feel like this purpose for my life is being tainted by all of the terrible things that are happening. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. And just that like tiny like kernel of separation and differentiation was so important to me, because I truly feel that from December of 2021 until, the winter of 2023, that I had almost lost myself to what was going on. And I forgot who I was and what I was capable of and what I could do. And I had allowed the terribleness of what was going on to cloud how very important this place is to me. And I took steps to protect my purpose. And by doing that, I was able to have time and peace for myself to start understanding what was going on, to really think about who I was and what I was willing to tolerate and what I wasn't willing to tolerate. And I can't say, I would love to say that I woke up and it was just like I snapped my fingers and everything got better. As anybody who has been in a situation like this can attest, it is an incredibly tricky situation to be in, because you almost don't want to believe, you almost can't believe that it's happening. And anybody that knows me knows that I am no fucking joke. I am tough as nails. I'm super driven. I'm a very motivated person. I'm super hardworking. And I am also here to tell you, dude, that you cannot count yourself out, that this is not possible, that this could be happening to you. And it takes someone a long time to get to the point to realize what's going on and to see the situation for what it is. And even then, you might even not have total clarity. And then it takes you a long time to extricate yourself from that situation. And then it takes even longer to heal and even longer to truly get a good solid perspective from a healthy place of what was going on. So we all face situations, it is shockingly common for people to find themselves in this situation. And it doesn't even have to be a situation that is physically abusive. There are all manners of ways that you can find yourself in an abusive relationship. And my hope for anybody that is experiencing this is that you can start finding the strength and support that is out there. The resources that helped me are, first is that I worked for an organization that provided an employee assistance program, and both they and my counselor referred me to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. and they have both a website as well as a hotline that I will put here. And it is so incredibly helpful. If you are in this situation and you need support, you can message us and we will work wherever you are to connect you with the resources in your area. And I also strongly feel that it is incumbent on the people who have come before in these situations to talk very openly and honestly about what their experience is and what they have dealt with over time, because this kind of shit, it continues to go because it happens in secret, right? It happens behind closed doors. If you're someone like me, like, I'll be honest, like, I felt embarrassed. I felt embarrassed of when I think about who I am as a person. I felt really embarrassed that this was happening to me, that I was allowing it to happen. And it is so important that we start talking about this and we start doing something about this. And on the sanctuary, we are going to start doing something about this. We are going to start partnering with a local nonprofit who helps survivors of domestic violence. And we are going to open the sanctuary to group therapy sessions. And we are going to open our doors for teen education about domestic violence. So we want to support people who have experienced this to help them heal. And we want to provide a place for young people to come and learn about how to break the cycle of domestic violence so that it doesn't happen in the future. This was a tough topic to talk about. I was very nervous to talk about this topic, but it is an incredibly important topic to talk about. And I just want to thank the team at the Cloven Heart Sanctuary, who has provided just such an incredible book that gives so much food for thought about the work that we do and how the work that we do extends beyond just the sanctuary. Like, it extends far beyond in the day to day in our daily lives. So thank you to the team at Cloven Heart for such a thoughtful book. As always, so incredibly grateful to the people who support our work, whether you are supporting the sanctuary financially, whether you volunteer, whether you work for the sanctuary, and anybody who just spreads the word about the work that we do as the sanctuary. It is so incredibly appreciated. We will see you next time, where we kick off Chapter 2 officially. With so much love from the Muddy Pug.
I know where you are, and I'm coming to carry you home.